I never wanted any of this to happen. I just wanted a normal break with my best friends. I don't know what went wrong. First day of break from my freshman year of college at Brown University. I wish I could have stayed at school, but my mom had been up my ass trying to get me to come home. I'd avoided it since moving to Rhode Island. I didn't want to come back home to Iowa to my screaming siblings and my pestering mother. As far as my father was concerned, I had not met or heard about him since he left us all over 10 years ago. He was a good-for-nothing fella. My mother had to do all the heavy lifting to provide for us. To lessen the blow, I'd asked my best friends Luke and Blair to tag along. They were planning on staying at school since they both live out of the country, and they didn't want to take hours-long flights to get back home. Luke, Blair, and I met while all cliff jumping in Rhode Island. We had been inseparable since. We did things like that a lot. Cliff diving, jumping, skydiving, etc. We do it all, and it solidified our strength and friendship. When I asked them if they'd go on this crazy adventure with me, Blair was so excited to meet my family, while Luke asked if I had a hot sister. That's just the way we were. Blair and Luke were my family. So we set off to get from Rhode Island to Iowa, stopping along the way by Blair's request to see the sights and take pictures at every state sign. We'd have to use the bathroom like normal people, so we'd stop at the not-so-sketchy gas stations. Everything was fine until, in Pennsylvania, there was an odd occurrence. My truck was older, so it has a little trouble every so often. Nothing too crazy, but sometimes it doesn't start after it gets a little hot. It hasn't been an issue, and I don't see it becoming a real one. A little dark green Buick pulled up beside my truck, and the man inside asked if we had extra money for them to get gas. We were broke college students, so we said no. He gave Blair an alarming look before pulling away. "What was that?" said Luke. Blair quickly responded, "It was probably nothing. Let's just leave." So we left. Hours had passed, and we were about to cross the border between Ohio and Indiana when Blair said aloud, "I have to pee." "There's not a gas station for miles," I said, looking at my GPS. "I literally do not care. I'll pee on a bush." A few seconds later, I saw an outhouse-looking building and pulled up next to it. Blair ran out of the car and into the door before I could even say anything. "Odd place for a bathroom, don't you think?" Luke questioned. "Of course I do. She just needs to pee, then we will leave. We don't have much more driving to do," I said. Just then, a dark green Buick pulled up to the building. The man from Pennsylvania got out of the car. Luke and I looked at each other. Luke ran to the door that Blair went inside and yelled for her to hurry up. I watched the man. He looked at Luke, then turned his attention toward me. He had some sort of mask on. He cocked his head as if he was curious. He reached into his pocket. I looked at his hands just in time for him to pull out a knife from his pants. I was in shock. Luke and Blair were both watching now. All of us, frozen in front of this man. The man laughed at me and sliced my arm. It hurt like hell. Blood began to stream down my arm. Blair screamed while Luke ran towards the man. I yelled for Blair to get into the car. Luke had the man in front of him and punched him. The man fell to the ground, and Luke ushered me to get into the car. I turned the key in the ignition. Nothing happened. "Come on, not now, please," I begged. "He's getting up. Sam, you better start this car," Blair cried. I tried again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. I hit the steering wheel over and over. Started. Restarted. Nothing. 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 The man was standing now. He was walking towards the car. I did it once more. Engine started. A sigh of relief washed over all of us. I hit the gas pedal. Hard. Not even looking behind me. I got back on the road. "Dude, look at your arm." Luke sounded emotional. I looked down at my blood-stained sleeve. "I'll be okay. Let's just put some distance between us and that psycho. How did he even find us? We saw him 2 states over. Do you think he's stalking us?" I tried to rationalize the last 10 minutes in my brain. It seemed so weird and strange to me. Why did this happen? About 10 minutes up the road, my check engine light pops up. "Oh no." Blair sounded more scared than annoyed. It'll be fine. There's no way the guy could have caught up to us." I tried to sound more assured than I feel. Up ahead, I saw a McDonald's. Never in my life had I seen anything so beautiful, but the lights weren't on. I decided to pull over to check my engine light out. I told everyone to stay in the car just in case anything happened. I got outside my car and went to the hood, pulled it up. Steam came out of it. I don't know much about cars, but I know that's a bad sign. I pulled out my phone. No signal. I went back inside the car. I asked Luke and Blair if they had a signal. Nope. So the car was toast. Phones were toast. Also, we were hungry, so we trekked into McDonald's. Right off the bat, we were scared. We quickly realized this was an abandoned location. We looked around. This place was in bad shape. Tables flipped over. The windows had some sort of muddy brown sludge on them. The floor was stained, chairs broken. It smelt of death. Immediately, Blair began to look for a first aid kit, even though I assured her that I'd be fine. She found one back in the kitchen. We opened it. It looked sterile enough. While Blair helped me, Luke was exploring. As she was finishing up, Luke painfully yelled from the front of the building. We ran out there, and backlit by car headlights, we saw the man holding Luke up with a knife stuck in from the back. Blair screamed. I took her hand and ran to the back. The man laughed. His laugh radiated throughout the restaurant. I took Blair and we hid under something in the kitchen. Blair was sobbing now, and I'll admit, I wasn't doing too well either. I motioned for Blair to cover her mouth to muffle her sound. She got the message, then suddenly, a sharp ping bellowed through the kitchen. A knife on metal. He was here. Blair's breath hitched. I closed my eyes. I just wanted to go home. I needed to see my family. I don't know why this man was after us. I could hear his steps getting closer. I was breathing heavily. Blair, completely shocked and traumatized, jumped from her hiding spot and yelled, "He's right here!" I looked at her. I was so confused. She wiped her tears away and just stared. I turned to see her pointing at the man with the knife. My heart sank, thinking that he had found our hiding spot. But then, to my astonishment, I noticed something peculiar about the scene before us. The man with the knife was no longer menacingly advancing towards us. Instead, he stood frozen in place, his eyes wide with fear, and he was staring not at us, but at something behind Blair. Confused and terrified, I followed his gaze, and that's when I saw it. A shadowy figure emerging from the darkness of the abandoned McDonald's. A figure that looked eerily familiar. As I stepped closer to the dim light, I gasped in disbelief. It was my father. He had aged since I last saw him, his face weathered and lined with the passage of time. He looked nothing like the lazy, disinterested man who had haunted my childhood. There was determination and resolve in his eyes, a stark contrast to the lifeless expression I remembered. My father moved swiftly, disarming the man who had been threatening us. The knife clattered to the floor, and the assailant stumbled backward in shock and fear. My father, without saying a word, grabbed the man's arm and wrestled him to the ground, pinning him. Blair and I watched in astonishment as my father held the intruder down, his voice low and commanding as he spoke into the man's ear. Whatever he said made the intruder tremble with fear. When it was over, my father released the man, who scrambled to his feet and fled from the restaurant, disappearing into the night. I couldn't comprehend what had just happened. My father, the man I had grown to despise, had just saved our lives. He turned to look at me. There was a hint of remorse in his eyes. Without a word, he walked away into the darkness. Blair and I were left stunned in silence. As we made our way back to the car, my mind raced with questions. What had changed in my father? Why had he come to my rescue? And why had the man been so terrified of him? The next day, as we waited for help to arrive at our stranded car, I couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary had taken place that night. A night when the past collided with the present in the most unexpected way, revealing depths of my father that I had never known. As we drove away from that abandoned McDonald's, I couldn't help but wonder if there was a chance for reconciliation and healing. A chance for my family to finally find the normalcy I had always longed for. The journey ahead remained uncertain, but one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. My name is Sam. I've worked at Subway for 3 years. It's an okay job, and I really like my coworkers. Unfortunately, our regional manager pulled me aside and told me that I needed to change locations to another Subway that was understaffed. I was upset because my regular location was very close to my house, and the new one was in a really sketchy part of town. It wasn't surprising that they couldn't get enough workers. My first couple shifts in the new location went fine. I worked alongside a teenager named Gus who seemed nice enough, but on Saturday, I had to take the night shift by myself. Gus warned me to be careful because a lot of creeps came out at night. I told him that I wasn't scared, but deep down, I really didn't want to be there. When my shift started, it was still daylight. A few customers came in and nothing strange happened. But right after the sun set, a homeless man walked in. I recognized him from one of the posters we had on the wall. He was one of several people who were banned from the restaurant because of some past issue, usually stealing or starting fights. I wish the poster had said why he was banned, so then I would know what to look for. He walked in, and I politely told him that he wasn't allowed to eat here. I'm not a very confrontational person, and I've never had to kick anyone out before, so I kept things as short and direct as possible. He didn't leave. Instead, he stepped closer and looked down at my name tag. "Sam," he said. "It looks like you're all alone here tonight." "Please, leave," I told him again. That was when he smiled at me. It was the most unnerving smile I'd ever seen, like he was mocking me, like he was laughing on the inside as he waited for me to physically remove him from the restaurant or something. I pulled out my phone, ready to call the police, but he said, "I wouldn't do that if I were you. You live on 12th Street, right?" My blood froze. How did he know that? I lied and told him no. "No, you do," he said. "A little blue house. You have 2 cats. It would be a shame if something were to happen to them." Was he threatening me? Was he threatening my cats? Still smiling, he promised that he wouldn't hurt me as long as I made him a sandwich. All I wanted was for him to go away. I knew that if I called the police, he might start something. I figured the only thing I could do was to take his order and wait for him to leave. So I asked him what he wanted, and he ordered a 6-inch tuna sandwich with nothing else on it. As I was fixing it for him, he could see that my hands were shaking. I was really trying hard to appear brave, but I wasn't fooling him. Once I got the sandwich ready, he tried to pay me with a crisp $100 bill. I didn't know for sure, but I got the distinct feeling that it was either counterfeit or stolen. I refused to take it and told him that it was on the house. I knew that I'd have to pay for his sandwich out of my own money, but as long as I got him out of there, I didn't mind. Without thanking me, he grabbed the sandwich and then sat down at a table in the corner. I politely asked him to eat the sandwich somewhere else, thinking that paying for his meal had given me a bit of leverage. But he just shook his head and said, "No thank you, I'm fine right here." I stood behind the counter and pretended he wasn't there. He ate his sandwich very slowly, staring at me the whole time. After a few minutes of silence, he said, "Hey Sam, how's your mom doing? She lives in Phoenix, right?" "No," I told him, but that was a lie. "It must be difficult for an old woman like her to live all alone," he said. "I hope she's safe." Once again, he sounded like he was threatening me. Talking about my cats was one thing, but talking about my mother? That was too far. I walked around the counter and marched toward his table. "What's your problem?" I asked him. He didn't answer. He just kept chewing. I told him he had 5 more minutes, and then he had to get out of there. He still didn't answer. I'd had enough. I pulled out my phone and started to dial the police. Before I started the call, I told him that this was his last chance to leave. He said, If you call the police, I will track down everything that you love, and I will destroy it all. Clearly, this guy was crazy. I still didn't know how he knew so much about my life, but I decided not to think about that. I called 911 and told him that we have an unruly customer. The man got out of his chair and walked toward the front door. "You've made your decision," he said. "I'm very sorry." And then he was gone. I called 911 again and tried to tell them not to come, but a policeman was already on his way. When he got there, I explained what happened and his eyes went wide. He asked what the homeless man looked like, and I showed him the poster on the wall. The policeman said that I just made an enemy with a very dangerous person. He told me that if I ever saw the man again, I needed to apologize. It seemed like such a weird thing for a policeman to say. He didn't even bother writing down the information for his reports. He just left. When my shift ended, I went home and saw that my back window was wide open. I knew that I had closed it before I left. The first thing I thought was that the man had snuck in. Slowly, I walked through the house and checked every room. I didn't see any signs of an intruder. I finally started to calm down until I realized that I didn't see my cats either. They were gone. I'd had both cats for years now, and they've never tried to run away before. Had they wandered off? Had the homeless man taken them? I tried to go to sleep, but I was too nervous. I ended up just lying in my bed thinking about how that man had promised to come after everything that I loved. The next day, I put up flyers around the neighborhood for my missing cats. It was my day off from work, so I stayed home and ordered a pizza. As I was eating, my phone rang. It was my mother. When I answered, her voice sounded frantic. I asked her what was wrong, and she said that our house had been burned down in the night. Everything was destroyed. Thankfully, she was okay. I knew this had something to do with that man's warning. I had to track him down and apologize before anything worse happened. I ended up calling my coworker Gus and told him everything. I didn't even need to describe the man. Gus knew exactly who I was talking about. I asked him what I could do, and he told me there was nothing I could do. No one knew when that man would show up or what misery he'd bring with him. All I could do was be careful. For the rest of the week, a string of terrible things happened to me. I crashed my car and completely totaled it. I fell on my porch and nearly broke my arm. And my cats still hadn't come back. I was constantly on edge, always looking around me. When Saturday rolled around, I once again got the night shift. I felt anxious, silently hoping that the homeless man would come back. For the whole night, I kept looking out the front door to see if he'd come back. He never did. It's been 3 weeks and I still haven't seen him again. My bad luck keeps continuing, and I honestly don't know if it's all a coincidence or if it's because of that man. Either way, he got what he wanted.
When my boyfriend Aaron asked me out to dinner a few nights ago, I assumed we'd go to a real restaurant. But when he pulled up into the Burger King parking lot, my hopes were dashed. In hindsight, I shouldn't have been surprised. Aaron usually made me pay for everything, so it made sense that the one time he offered to treat me to dinner, we'd end up being at some fast food place just a few blocks from our house. Still, I wasn't complaining. I loved burgers, and I loved Aaron even more. Any time spent with him would be fine with me. As soon as we got our food, though, I noticed something was up. He wouldn't look me directly in the eyes. He kept staring out the windows and fumbling with his food. I started to worry that he was going to deliver some bad news. And then he said the 5 words I'd been dreading. "Joe, we need to talk." My heart sank. He was going to break up with me. On the one hand, I was shocked by this. I thought we were happy together. I thought we had a good life. On the other hand, I understood some of his problems. Aaron was chronically unemployed. He could never hold a job for longer than a couple of weeks, while I was making more than enough money for the both of us. I always told him that I didn't have a problem with this arrangement, but maybe he did. He struggled to speak. So I told him to just be blunt. Tell me the truth. His answer was something I did not expect. "I'm in trouble," he said. people are after me." "What?" I asked him. He still didn't look at me. He stared out the window at the cars whizzing by. He explained that he'd been taking out loans. He'd been gambling. He owed a lot of money to some very shady people. And when he told them that he needed extra time to pay them back, they said they were going to come after him. "So what does that mean?" I asked him. He choked on his burger. It means," he said, "that I'm in danger and I need your help." Now, my first instinct was to scream at him for being so stupid. How could he get mixed up in something like that? How could he keep all this from me? But his expression seemed so sad, so broken, that I couldn't stay mad at him. I can help," I said. "How much do you need?" He breathed deeply. 5,000, he said. "And I sort of need you to deal with these guys. I've only ever talked with them online, and I kind of pretended to be you when I did. I used your photo." I was speechless. Not only had Aaron gotten mixed up in illegal gambling, but he'd used me as a cover? I'd lived with him for 3 years now. I had no idea that he'd be capable of such a betrayal. Before I could say anything, Aaron saw something through the window and he jerked back in horror. A black van had just parked outside and 3 large men got out. They lumbered toward the front door. I knew right away that those were the men Aaron had been afraid of. They each held crowbars. The rest of the Burger King was completely empty. Even the girl at the front counter had gone into the kitchen. It was just the 2 of us as those men rushed inside. They looked around and recognized me right away, probably from the photo Aaron had used. It's okay," he told me. "They just want to break a kneecap. Just let them do it. You can even pick which one. After that, you can pay them." His voice was shaky and scared, but he didn't sound guilty for what he was asking me to do. 2 of the men walked toward me, while the 3rd stepped behind the counter to deal with the worker in the back. The 2 men wore grave expressions. Intimidating, but also apathetic, as if they were just doing their jobs. "Joseph Carter," one of them said. That's my name. I had 2 choices. I could either admit who I was and accept the intense, horrifying pain of a shattered knee, or I could stand up and try to fight against 2 thugs who were each twice my size. Aaron watched me, expecting me to take the punishment. He knew that I wasn't strong enough to defend myself. He knew that I was too weak and scared to fight back. And usually, I would have been. But right then, I was powered by the anger of this betrayal and the fear of getting maimed. I pushed myself out of the booth and stared them both down. "I'm Joseph," I said. They nodded at each other. One brushed to my side and grabbed my shoulders. The other started tapping his crowbar against his palm. The one who held me whispered in my ear, "Hold still. This won't take long." That was when I acted. I twisted out of his grip and kneed him in the groin. As he keeled over, I pulled the crowbar out of his hand and raced across the restaurant. I shielded myself behind the table, swinging the crowbar in front of me. If they were going to come at me, I'd put up a fight. At first, the 2 men were too surprised to move. Then they started coming at me from either side. I couldn't take them both on at once, so I needed to think of something fast. "Wait," I said. They both stopped. By then, the 3rd man had come back out of the kitchen and joined the others. "You knew you were coming," one of them said. "You said you'd take your punishment." My mind whirled with possible explanations. For a long, horrible moment, I couldn't think of anything to say. These men meant business, and there was nothing I could do to change their minds. Then I thought of something. The only way to save myself was to give up. "Okay," I said. "Do whatever you want to me, but leave my boyfriend alone." I pointed towards Aaron, who was still sitting in the booth watching the drama unfold. "I love this man more than anything, and if you hurt him instead of me, I don't think I could survive that. He's the light of my life, the reason I wake up in the morning, so if you go after him in any way, it would punish me so much more than any pain you could inflict on my own body. Do you understand? I really laid it on thick, forcing tears out of my eyes and gesturing wildly at Aaron. I waited for a long moment, scared that my plan wasn't going to work. But then the three men started smiling. They turned away and started approaching Aaron. As he screamed, they each dove at him. I could have left in the moment, but I wanted to see the carnage. It all happened so fast, less than a minute, but they left Aaron a bloody, semi-conscious mess. His kneecaps were both shattered, and several other bones were broken. As Aaron whimpered from the booth, one of the men turned towards me. "You shouldn't have brought your boyfriend here." "Nah," I agreed. "I shouldn't have. Now let's go to the ATM and get your money."